Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am here to celebrate Alberta's success at cutting red tape and to tell you about the latest changes we are proposing to make life better for Albertans and Alberta businesses. Today is kind of special to me, given that this is government's 10th red tape reduction bill since 2019. Now, since we set out on this journey 6 years ago, we have celebrated a lot of successes. Alberta has reduced red tape by 35%. Since 2019, we've eliminated nearly 220,000 regulatory requirements and completed hundreds of initiatives to reduce red tape. Cumulatively, all this work has generated more than $3 billion in savings for Albertans and Alberta businesses. Our work to reduce red tape has also won us a few accolades along the way, with Alberta receiving top marks from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. In fact, Alberta received an A grade last January in the 2025 CFIB Red Tape Reduction Report Card. The CFIB also named Alberta as one of its 2 One to Watch award recipients, thanks to our automatic yes policy toolkit, which we introduced in early 2025. I look forward to seeing how we fare when the 2026 report card comes in the new year. Now, let's take that's a quick look in the rearview mirror in our drive to cut red tape and deliver better, faster, and smarter services to Albertans. Now I'd like to shift focus and talk about the legislation we are tabling today. Bill 10, the Red Tape Reduction Statutes Amendment Act 2025. This proposed legislation would make amendments to legislation across 4 different ministries to solidify Alberta's position as the best place in Canada to live, work, and do business. In my ministry, this bill will support the implementation of modernized driver's licenses and ID cards, displaying personal health care numbers and Canadian citizenship information. Albertans will have a seamless experience and no longer need to carry multiple cards to verify their identity, their driving privileges, or citizenship while accessing the services they rely on, such as healthcare. The integration of personal health numbers and citizenship on government-issued ID will come at no additional charge. The proposed legislation would also support the Minister of Tourism and Sports' development of all-season resorts by making the approval process more efficient, by clarifying definitions and giving the government the ability to develop regulations regarding review timelines, public notice requirements, and develop agreements. For the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation, amendments would help create new tourism opportunities in rural areas and improving the viability of Alberta's domestic elk and deer industry by allowing producers to establish harvest preserves. And finally, it would help the Ministers of Jobs, Economy and Trade increase labour mobility by prohibiting registration requirement for Canadian work experience for Albertans seeking registration in regulated professions, unless an approval is required due to health and safety concerns. Amendments would also set specific timelines for registration decisions and require work experience criteria to be published. Bill 10 would help boost tourism and economic growth, address labour shortages in regulated professions, and improve how Albertans access government services. I look forward to introducing the bill today on behalf of Alberta's government as we continue to cut even more red tape and deliver better, faster, and smarter services to Albertans. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We're now going to take questions from the media, starting with those who are here in person. So I just want to show of hands. And then when I call on you, please state your name, outlet, and we're just doing one question, one follow-up today. So go ahead, Catherine.
Catherine Gurkowski, Alberta. So with this bill, people have no choice but to bring proof of their citizenship, or I guess if they don't have citizenship, no. When they're renewing their driver's license or getting an ID, how is that not red tape?
Well, the good news is you only have to do it once. And then when you're applying for future benefits with the government of Alberta, it's going to make it easier for you because you're not going to have to produce a birth certificate. It's going to be on your driver's license. And let's be clear, that's what this is about. This is about making it easier for Albertans to access services.
And a follow-up?
On the All Seasons Resort Act, so one of the changes is that these All Seasons resorts can be built on private and public property. There's changes to the timelines. Can you give me a sense of what you heard from industry that needed to change in order for these this act to be useful to them?
These are just clarifying amendments that, for example, is going to clarify that all-season resorts will include resorts partially located on private land. In addition, the all-season resort development would be broadened to include any resort facility with year-round services. So again, these are just clarifying amendments that's going to help everybody move forward.
Great. Emmanuel, go ahead.
So with this citizenship added and the health card number, should Albertans expect to see the paper health card disappear and only have one card to rule them all? With what's the next steps after?
Well, that would be a decision for health to make, and they haven't made that decision yet, but it will be communicated shortly.
And for the deer and elk farm hunting, I'm looking for some precision or explanation of why is it needed? What do you think your government, what do you think will happen? Will there be a new economy? Explain it to me like I'm an urban guy who's never shot a deer in my life. Okay?
You betcha. I appreciate the question because I do get this question a lot. And listen, there's been a lot of changes in the cervid industry when it comes to domestic production over the last few decades. Export opportunities are very limited. Of course, Alberta, many decades ago, looked at a diversification plan moving out into areas to domestically farmed cervids. We supported that. We still do support that. What we heard from that industry was due to limited export opportunities, they were looking at us to be able to consider cervid harvest preserves to allow that to happen within the province of Alberta so they have an additional opportunity for revenue. And really this is critical for their industry at this time when they're struggling to be successful in that space. And I want to state, cervid farming is a very sustainable practice. A lot of these elk are raised in areas where we can't raise cattle or other. We want to continue to support that as a part of our strategy to continue to have a diversified agricultural industry here in the province. And the industry itself approached me on multiple occasions and said that this was necessary for them to have a sustainability in the future. And this is a practice that is done in Saskatchewan already and other jurisdictions in Canada. So we saw it as a reasonable opportunity to have that same activity here through these cervid harvest preserves. Of course, they're going to be under strict criteria. We'll be under the approval how they're created under the department and what they look like to ensure that there is everything from fair chase and the most ethical manner in which we're harvesting these elk under these harvest preserves.
Can I go again? I have another question for the minister relating to the hunting.
We just gotta, since we're limited on time, we just have to go to Janet and then we're gonna head to the phones.
Okay, sorry, back to Minister Nally. I just wanted to get some timeline information. So can you give me a timeline roughly for getting citizenship ID markers on licenses and a potential timeline for considering merging licenses with health cards? And also, what about the app? I forget the name of the app, the ID app thing.
Yeah. So the time frame is going to be mid-2026 for both the citizenship marker as well as the healthcare number. And in terms of the verified ID, you know what? That's Minister Glubich's. I'll have to get back to you on the date of that one.
Okay, and also a question for Minister Scow. I mean, this 2020 Fair Registration Practices Act, my recollection, I just looked really quickly, is that did set timelines under which professional regulatory bodies had to not only consider and approve applications for licensing, but also they had to report back to this government about it. So can you just be really specific about what's changing in terms of what's going to be required of these regulatory bodies?
Well, the expectation is that you won't have to have Canadian citizen work experience, right? Canadian work experience in order to have your credentials recognized. We're looking at dealing with a real problem in this province of filling the labor gaps and shortages. And that's why we're reducing interprovincial trade barriers, interprovincial mobility barriers, and of course now bringing in people from out of country should they have the skills that we need to fill certain workforce demands. So I think this is a really great step in the right direction. A number of other provinces are looking at ways that they can reduce barriers to make sure their workforce has the labor they need when they need it.
What are the time limits changing?
So we're implementing this right as fast as possible, and the reality is that the labor market in Alberta continues to change. We have to adapt. This is why we're making these changes and recognizing people, getting them working as fast as possible so their credentials are recognized and meeting the labor demands.
Great. Now we're going to head to the phones. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Kevin Quinn from CTV News, your line is open.
Hi, this is a question regarding the cervid farmed hunts. How will you ensure that there isn't an increase in CWD or like diseases as a result of this? I know that there is documented cross-contact between farmed and wild cervids, and there's also documented CWD in the wild population for sure, and it has in the past crossed into the farm population in some locations.
Yeah, great question. And this gives me a chance to highlight that this will not, all the changes that happen with the cervid harvest preserves doesn't change as far as endemic and non-endemic zones, nor does it change the high standards that we have as it relates to CWD testing in our domestic populations. And of course, as you mentioned, there is CWD present both in wild, and we do see it as well in the domestic populations. Well, what I would say is under the domestic side, it is a very strict policy that all cervids are tested for CWD at harvest to ensure that we're monitoring and taking a look at CWD and ensuring to minimize the spread in the province of Alberta. None of those changes, there won't be any changes to that. We continue to make sure that we have the highest standards when it comes to animal and foreign animal disease control in the province of Alberta.
And a follow-up?
This, at least according to what we heard this morning, the reason was an increase in tourism. How will you ensure that those tourism dollars are, well, realized, I guess, and that they're not just, a rich, for lack of a better way of putting it, a rich American hunter flying in, spending a couple of nights shooting an animal and flying back out and spending his money all in one place at the farm and not really spending it in a wider tourist community?
Well, I would say, and I'll start, and I'll actually get Minister Scow to jump in on this too as well, but it does present a lot of opportunities for tourism and growth. I would say that from what we've seen historically in other provinces, that it does create a tourism aspect to it, a hunting tourism that supports a lot of remote communities that normally don't see those additional dollars. It does create a lot of potential there, and we see opportunities both for cervid harvest preserves and Indigenous communities too as well as it relates to cervid harvest preserves. But I'll turn it over to Minister Scow for additional comments on the tourism side.
Thanks, Minister Sigurdsson. I think you addressed this in very well. But just putting on my old tourism hat, what I can say is we actually do want hunters and anglers and others coming from out of country into Alberta and spending money here. The more opportunities that we have to promote Alberta products, it helps bolster the local economies. They buy products to support their tourism accommodation, their tourism products that they're offering to visitors. So we measure success in terms of visitor spend. Our goal is $25 billion by 2035, and I think the measures that Minister Sigurdsson and Minister Nally are taking in this legislation will help us reach that goal.
Great. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Jean Emmanuel Fortier from Radio Canada. Your line is open.
Hi. Thanks for taking my question. Just to follow up a bit on all the previous questions and Emmanuel's as well, just so we can understand clearly about the difference for, let's say, a visitor from outside Canada that's coming in. Right now, you could pay a guide and try to hunt an elk if you get the tags and things like that, and they would spend thousands and tens of thousands. What's the value proposition for a visitor to go to these preserves precisely, like in layman's term? Is it easier, maybe more guaranteed to catch a cervid, or maybe cheaper, or all of the above? I don't know. Thank you.
Well, definitely it's a tourism experience, an experience that's slightly different than hunting openly in the wild, understanding that in a lot of cases when you're looking at hunting cervids in the wild, you have to draw tags. You can get out-of-country tags too as well, but that's quite limited. I would leave those comments more to our Ministry of Forestry and Parks, but what I can say is there is a big draw for these cervid harvest preserves. This is what we've seen in Saskatchewan. We've seen a lot of dollars there invested behind this. We see a cervid industry here in Alberta that want cervid harvest preserves. They've said this to me over and over again, and there's a huge potential for them and the communities in which surround them to be able to create an entirely new economy. And this is something that I want to be clear in saying. When we were talking to the cervid industry, the domestic farmers, they said to me when they first approached me just over a year ago that this is critical, that this happens for them to continue to be successful farmers in the cervid space. And when I said this before, the diversity of our agricultural industry here in Alberta is a real reason behind our incredible success globally, and cervid farmers have a place to play in that, in the fact that they have been hugely successful in farming in areas that normally you wouldn't see beef or bison or others, and we see a lot of opportunities for this type of sustainable farming practices.
All right, and follow-up?
Still for Minister Sigurdsson, is still an off-topic question, though. My colleagues from CBC reported that some northern Alberta farmers would like the federal government to allow the sale of raw milk in Alberta to offer more flexibility to local producers and maybe more offering to local consumers. It's going to be proposed at RMA in the next few days. Does the provincial government have a position on that? And what would you personally, and I guess, think about that request? Thank you.
Well, listen, I always answer this question by saying the number one concern for my department is always food safety and food security, and we approach it as such. When it comes to the conversation about raw milk, this has been put to my office multiple times. We've heard it's going to be tabled at RMA. Of course, it's an active conversation, but like you had mentioned, this is a federal issue. It is up to the federal government to make decisions as it relates to the pasteurization or the availability for sale of raw milk. So I direct those individuals to have those conversations, both with our milk and milk producers here in the province, but as well with the federal counterparts that are in control of that legislation.
Right, that concludes all the time for today. Thank you all for coming.